She was the brightest girl in her village, always with a book in her hand, always dreaming big. Everyone said she was going to make it, but something changed. Years later, the same girl, now barely recognizable, sat in a hotel room, staring at her reflection. What happened to Amaka? How did the girl with so much promise end up like this? This is not just her story, it's a warning every student must hear before they leave home. Amaka was the kind of girl every mother prayed for. She was born and raised in a small, quiet village in Enugu by parents who had nothing but love, faith, and discipline to offer. Her father, Mr. Okeke, was a retired civil servant, and her mother sold vegetables in the local market. They didn't have much, but they made sure Amaka went to school, had food on the table, and never missed church. Amaka was sharp, always the best in her class, and never gave her parents a reason to worry. Even her pastor once said, "This girl will make this village proud." When she got admission into a big university in the Southwest, it was celebration all around. People brought gifts, the church prayed for her, and her parents gave her the only advice they could. "Amaka, remember where you're coming from. Don't follow bad friends. Face your books. Be prayerful." She nodded with tears in her eyes and promised to make them proud. And for the whole of her first year, she did just that. Amaka went to class every day, sat in the front row, and always had her notes complete. She joined the fellowship on campus and even became part of the prayer unit. Her roommates used to joke that she carried the Bible like handbag. She didn't mind. She prayed every morning and called home every evening to tell her parents how school was going. But things began to change in her second year. She moved into a new hostel and got new roommates, girls who wore expensive clothes, always had money, and laughed loudly at night while scrolling through their iPhones. They started inviting her out, but Amaka always said no, at least at first. Amaka tried her best to ignore her new roommates. At first, she would lock herself in the room and plug her ears with gospel music anytime they brought friends over. She didn't like how they dressed or how late they returned at night. They wore short clothes, carried designer bags, and always smelled of expensive perfume. Amaka didn't hate them, she just didn't understand their lifestyle. When they laughed at her for reading too much or called her Mama Church, she smiled politely and continued with her quiet life. But slowly, the pressure began to build. One evening, Amaka returned from lectures and found a new pair of heels on her bed. "Try it," her roommate Chisholm said. "It will fit you." Amaka hesitated but tried it on. It did fit. "See? You're fine. You're just hiding," Chisholm said with a smile. They didn't stop there. They began complimenting her beauty, telling her she was too fine to be sitting in the hostel reading every day. "Life is more than books," her second roommate Linda would say. "There's nothing wrong with enjoying yourself a little. You only live once." After weeks of persuasion, Amaka finally gave in and agreed to go out with them just once. It was a birthday party at a club outside campus. She wore borrowed clothes, applied makeup for the first time, and followed them. But as they entered the loud, dark club filled with smoke, music, and strange faces, Amaka felt uncomfortable. She sat quietly in a corner, clutching her phone. When a man tried to talk to her, she quickly excused herself and left the club early. Back in the hostel, she told her roommates she didn't like it. "Don't worry," Linda laughed. "First time is always weird. You'll get used to it." Amaka wasn't so sure. That night, she couldn't sleep. She thought about her parents, her church, and her promises. She wanted to remain the good girl she had always been. But the compliments, the gifts, and the attention from her roommates began to chip away at her resolve. It was the beginning of a slow, silent change. By the time Amaka got to her third year in the university, everything about her had changed. She now wore expensive clothes, had long nails, and her once natural hair was always fixed with wigs that cost more than her school fees. She stopped attending lectures regularly. Her grades began to drop. She no longer answered her parents' calls often. She would say she was busy or in class, even when she was lying on the bed in a 5-star hotel. It didn't happen all at once, but little by little, Amaka stopped being the girl she used to be. Her roommates had introduced her to some big boys on campus, men who had money, cars, and connections. One of them took interest in Amaka and started giving her gifts: an iPhone, cash, and trips to Lagos and Abuja. She didn't think it was dangerous. She told herself she was just enjoying life. When her father came to visit her unannounced one weekend, he didn't recognize her immediately. She was wearing tight jeans, crop top, and had long lashes on. "Amaka?" he asked, staring. "Yes, Daddy," she said, laughing awkwardly. He was heartbroken. He didn't say much. He just gave her some food items and money and left quietly. At night, Amaka couldn't sleep. She remembered how he had once carried her on his bicycle to school, how he had sold his farmland to pay her acceptance fee. She told herself she would change soon, maybe after this semester. But the next weekend, she traveled again, this time to a hotel in Port Harcourt with a rich man she had just met. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. Her roommates thought she was coming back in 2 days. She never returned. 3 days later, her lifeless body was found in the hotel bathroom. The man was nowhere to be found. Her parents received a call from the police. Her mother fainted when she heard the news. Her father couldn't stop crying. In church, everyone asked, "What happened to Amaka? She used to be a good girl." Nobody had the full answer, but everyone agreed on one thing: she forgot where she came from, and the world swallowed her. No matter how smart or focused you are, the people you surround yourself with can shape your future more than your own plans. Protect your values, because one wrong influence can turn a bright future into a painful regret. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please like and subscribe for more interesting stories. Also comment below what you personally learned from the story and where you're watching from. Thank you.